In an emotional testimony before the Senate today, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton took responsibility for the attacks on U.S. diplomatic outposts in Benghazi, Libya. She got into a heated exchange with Republican Senator Ron Johnson when he asked about the Obama administration's initial response to the attack.
Again, we were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator. Now, honestly, I will do my best to answer your questions about this, but the fact is that people were trying in real time to get to the best information. The IC has a process, I understand, going with the other committees to explain how these talking points came out. But, you know, to be clear, it is, from my perspective, less important today, looking backwards, as to why these militants decided they did it, than to find them and bring them to justice.
Republican Senator Rand Paul also had some strong words for Hillary Clinton. Take a listen.
I'm glad that you're accepting responsibility. I think that ultimately with your leaving, you accept the culpability for the worst tragedy since 9/11. And I really mean that. Had I been president at the time, and I found that you did not read the cables from Benghazi, you did not read the cables from Ambassador Stevens, I would have relieved you of your post. I think it's inexcusable.
I suppose it answers one question definitively, which is whether Hillary Clinton earlier last month was somehow scared to come to this hearing, and that's why she faked an illness or something like that. It's pretty clear she was ready to go from the moment she got here. You pulled pretty much, I think, the two most, I think, heated and dramatic moments of what was essentially actually a kind of droll and carefully argued hearing over about 2.5 hours, really. I think that a lot of the stuff that surfaced about Benghazi that came up in those two lines of questions about the way that the administration responded to the attack and the way they delivered news of the attack to the public, that stuff was sort of weeded out. I mean, that was the big controversy in the months before the election, and sort of resurfaced again when Susan Rice was potentially to be nominated for Secretary of State. That stuff actually was not really a highlight of this hearing. It was in a way, a much more substantive hearing about the security situation. You know, what you saw in Hillary Clinton's sort of outrage there reflected what I was hearing when I spoke to people at the State Department sort of in the months before the election, after Benghazi, and when this thing was flaring, where they saw essentially a massive disconnect between what the Republicans and Fox News in particular was identifying as this massive controversy, and what they saw as potentially very serious bureaucratic failings, but not any sort of politically motivated top-down attempt to somehow manipulate the public's awareness of what was going on. I mean, one of the fundamental things here is this question, I think, of was it a terrorist attack? And if you think about the logic of that, the logic seems to be that, you know, it could only be a terrorist attack if it had no other motivations, and that the administration would somehow want to hide that it was a terrorist attack, as if that was somehow in their benefit. And I think that's something that's never really been answered. Like, why would they want to do that? I think that was always sort of mystifying to people in the State Department.